Hello and welcome to the Voiro Podcast. It's season 6, episode 4, and today we have Deepak Gupta, who calls himself a product guy across a bunch of products at Jio. Welcome, Deepak, to the Voiro Podcast.
Thank you, Kavita.
We are here today to talk about the industry and delve into recent news that speaks to the intersection of business and technology, specifically in ad tech. I met Deepak at the recent ad tech event in Delhi, and we got talking over a cup of coffee, and it went on for a really long time. And I'm like, man, I've got to have Deepak on the podcast because, it's very rare that you can actually hold a conversation with somebody, especially at an event where everybody's trying to sell something to somebody else, right? And we were just like in this bubble, standing at this high table at the chai wala, coffee wala, and we spoke about everything, including like life, kids, the way things are so expensive, and then ad tech. And so it was an easy conversation. So I thought we'll have another easy conversation, but more around the topic of ad tech. For those who are listening in, a quick brief on who Deepak is. Deepak has been a part of the InMobi bandwagon. He's an old-time and old-hander at ad tech. He's not old, but he's like professionally experienced in ad tech. He's also been part of building an in-house DSP at a company, crossed over to partnerships, and today he's part of one of the biggest ad tech stories in India with Jio. And we're here to talk about his take on the state of ad tech in India and where it is headed. And just before we started this podcast, he's like, oh my God, sounds like an exam. And so he's like got this little piece of paper where he's writing down everything, and we started having a really interesting conversation even before we started recording. So we had to say, stop, let's record so that we can get all of this good stuff on. So, Deepak, what is your take on the state of ad tech in India and where is it headed?
Thank you, Kavita, for having me. Everybody's saying CTV is the future.
Yep.
I disagree with it.
Oh my,
The future is now. The CTV is now. And the way the CTV is evolving, it's like different from STV is CTV. Any big screen, and people are consuming content on large screen, and it is replacing the linear TV. My 75-year-old father, we have cut the cable about like 5 years ago, and he is streaming all the content live and otherwise on a CTV.
So how does he find content? Does he have any appointment viewing? Like earlier, older people would sit down and say certain shows would come at certain times, right? So how does he look at...
So he was never he was not a guy who like watches specific show. Is like news, sports, news and sports, and then news and sports.
Okay. But those are the most... statistically, those are the most invested viewers, right? Because they come back because they are passionate about both news as well as sports, and that's consistent. And they're the ones who pay for stuff, right? And so, what does he watch on CTV? Like, does he watch a specific news channel that is on all the time?
So it's like between 2 or 3 news channels. He flips depending on how loud the news gets. It's like there's more drama in the news than the Saas Bahu now.
Yeah, of course. And of course, with election season coming around, everybody's like eyes glued to TV, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it's starting today.
Is TV on all the time in your house?
Not always. I mean, I've got an 8-year-old kid, and we have timing strict. Try to follow a little timing.
What does your 8-year-old kid watch? TV or iPad? Both. Okay. And
iPad is not so much for content, but it's for homework and studies related. So not so much on. He hasn't discovered yet, I would rather say, or he does, but TV is still go-to medium.
Okay, so TV is entertainment and iPad is work.
Yeah.
Okay, that's quite a distinction, because I would have assumed that he's sitting and watching his iPad and like, accessing apps on it and stuff. Does he play games on the iPad? Not yet. I mean, he got access to iPad only during the COVID, when the school went online. Yeah.
So, and that time he was like still in the preschool.
Yeah.
So that means his first reaction to iPad is like studies.
Oh man, I did not even realize that, because I looked at iPads as a point of like
entertainment. I mean, this is for us because we got access to iPad for that particular purpose.
Correct.
And as a kid, the way you start using particular things for a particular reason, that's get hardwired very early.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. Brand new information to me. Yeah, that's a pretty interesting part. You touched upon the fact that having a digital STV is CTV, right? And all this time we've always spoken about the OEM TV manufacturer also kind of breaching into the CTV space, like your Samsung or your LG TV, etc. Talk to me a little bit about what's the technology that's in this STB that makes it that you call CTV right now. That's now, and how are people using it right now from an advertising perspective to be able to drive any kind of interaction with their users?
So, if you are consuming any content via internet on a large screen, either directly on the TV or through STB or a Fire Stick or anything, all is CTV. Because this large screen experience, which is replacing the linear TV, it's CTV. And you see audiences across all age segments, right? From my 8-year-old kid to my 70-year-old father, everybody is on CTV. And it is not just for, the HNI. The cost of CTV, especially via STVs, and big thanks to Reliance of democratizing CTV through their STB. You can get a CTV, a pure CTV in like less than 15K. There are enough players in the market who are doing that. There is premium segment to that. There is like across everything, it's available now. And it's growing at such a fast pace, even in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities in India. It's astonishing. I have the facts, I have the figures when we look at it, the growth, and we are tracking it almost on a regular basis. Not from the Infocom perspective, but from the ad perspective, how much audience that we can get there.
Yeah.
So, and advertisers, they have to always reach out to their audience in the medium they are consuming.
Yeah.
And there can't be more immersive experience that they can provide to their audience and still communicate the messaging about their brand. If you look at the main difference, which I find over a linear TV, advantage of CTV over a linear TV is, in linear TV, there was a lot of leakages. I mean, if you have to target based on the channel or the serial and the most preferred audience, the target audience who were, or I would say, the viewers, basis on that. But if you look at classic example, I mean, that's only Balika Vadhu.
Yeah.
I mean, I have watched it with my parents, with my siblings, with my grandparents. But if an ad comes, is it relevant for all of us? If an ad in Balika Vadhu comes in Bangalore versus in Himachal, a small town in Himachal, is it relevant? The same ad. So there's a lot of leakages. Comparatively in CTV, even smaller, and the ticket size used to be quite large for any advertiser to get access to linear TV. But in CTV, like mobile, you can run very targeted audience, and the leakages, which all the marketers would hate. They would want to minimize the leakages to have the maximum ROI of their budget.
Nice. So, I mean, it sounds like a dream, right? CTV at the end of the day, because you're saying that, there is audience targeting, there is no barrier to entry, you're getting new audiences from, tier 2, tier 3 cities. And, the regular televisions now, anybody buying a new TV set today is obviously going to be internet enabled, right? And I think the statistic is that people change television sets once in 7 years or some such thing. Also, the proliferation in India in the ability to afford things from a financial help perspective, right? Where you have different types of schemes. You have you have the ability to buy things, buy now, pay later. You have credit schemes, etc.
And the government freebies as well.
Yes, yeah. All the freebies as well. So I think in terms of there being critical mass in acquisition of this technology by users is on an up and up, and which is what you're saying, that you're able to look at the audience gathering on it. What about the flip side from an agency perspective? How do they look at CTV? Is there resistance in terms of planning and buying media? Because look, at the end of the day, when you look at linear, right, I find it's so simple and beautiful and expensive. So if I was an agency, I'd be like, just broad stroke this, buy a 6+ plan on whatever prime time, and what happens, and everybody walks away with one of the monitoring companies monitoring the fact that an ad was shown to your particular audience on a sample set, and you extrapolate it. This turns that entire concept on its head, right?
Yes,
How
exactly.
prepared is that the buying side to be able to accept this change?
So it's always a catching up game, but if you say, are they afraid to experiment or to buy on CTV? I would say no. I mean, I would have replied differently if you had asked me that question like few years ago.
Okay.
Even in India, where earlier used to be at least like 5 to 10 years gap between what was happening in other parts of the world versus India, but now that difference is narrowing down. It's like maybe few years. And in India, everybody is spending. How prepared they are? When mobile first came around, like Android and iOS got launched, if I'm not wrong, around like 10, 12 years ago, everybody was scared. They were, people, even the Google and Facebook, initially they wrote it off. They said it's not going to work, and they was concentrating entirely on web. But look what has happened. So people are aware the way user behaviors are changing in terms of the way they consume content, and marketers have to reach out to the users again in the medium, in the place where they are consuming the medium.
Yeah.
So everybody is doing it. The people who are adaptable, who learns, who moves with the time will be more successful.
Fair. From a DSP perspective, is there any massive changes from targeting CTV inventory, or is it just something that you can target based on an OEM, like you're saying Samsung or LG or Jio or whatever? Like, how does that work?
So the audience targeting has also evolved over the year. If it is Android or Apple TV based, you have an identifier just like a mobile, and basis that you can run your targeting. Again, the location can be inferred. It can be made available.
Right.
The user can give the consent to share the location, or based on the IP address, it can be inferred. So there are like a bunch of targeting, and there is a lot of contextual. Still, most of the CTV which is being bought and sold right now is bought on the content which is being played. So again, it is still being Balika Vadhu or IPL being sold rather, much more than the audience associated. But things are changing. People are experimenting. People are seeing good results. So it will change, and it's also becoming more democratized rather than being available or restricted to like few players. So that's what makes me happy.
Yeah. Also, the point of linear is that it was appointment viewing, and linear, therefore, is only one slot, right? Which is why there was a barrier to entry. Today, we are 4 of us in this room, and all 4 of us can be watching, the same stream on different screens, but have 4 different ads, right? And it could be a television screen. And that's basically what we're also talking about from a CTV perspective. Although the content may be appointment viewing, which may be a live sport like IPL, or news, but it would still be that I'm watching a different ad, which means that the inventory and capability of doubling and tripling and 4xing and 10xing that inventory is like sky's the limit, right? In CTV, there are different concepts, right? There is one which is what we spoke about, like news and sports, which is streamed live on a large screen through any kind of internet-enabled device, whether it's the STB, the TV in and of itself, or an additional dongle, Fire Stick, whatever, right? The second one is me finding apps that are on this CTV. And the third one is the FAST framework, right? The free ad-supported streaming television, which is the old way of looking at television, almost like it's like my playlist on YouTube married a linear TV and Tata Sky playlist, and there is like these various channels, right, based on a homogeneous set of content. How do you see all of these 3 things working as a targeted environment for the household, or do you see these things as 3 different opportunities for planning and looking at it as different inventory? Like, would you look at, like, for example, Netflix ads, and very recently they released their earnings, and they've zoomed ahead in terms of ads, and they're doing really well on ads. So much so that, as they have said in their letter, they have said they are looking to tap into additional revenue and profit pools, in particularly scaling ads to become a more meaningful contributor to our business in 2025 and beyond. Right? I don't think if they had to look at themselves 3 years ago, like you said, right? If you had asked this question a little earlier, if you had asked them 3 years ago whether this would be a part of their shareholder letter for the quarterly results, they would have turned
capital NO.
And yes, they would be like, absolutely not. So things are changing. So coming back to the question, there are 3 ways of looking at the way people interact with an internet-enabled broadcast stream on a large screen. There is one which is appointment viewing, which has to be appointment viewing because it's live and it's topical and you don't want to miss it, which is live news as well as live sports. The second one is app-based, which is more discovery-oriented. And the third one is fast, which is confusing to me because I'm wondering how does fast fit into this entire world. While it's very exciting to me from a understanding what a user wants to watch and also delving into past behavior, how does this work as a business model? What's your opinion on that?
So if you look at a very apt question, by the way. So the way fast is, it's replacing the linear channel from, players who are either not tech savvy enough from the production side to have the app, and then maintaining that itself is a huge cost. So,
right.
And if it was a free-to-air channel, making it available as a fast channel or in a CTV environment is a more gradual progression. They are also making it available on few aggregated apps, but compared to that, fast may be better one. And again, if you were a marketer and if I ask you, would you run your campaign only on, let's say, Google, or only on Facebook, or only on Twitter?
No, I wouldn't. I want a mix. Yeah.
So that's your answer for that.
This would be my CTV mix.
It has to be a CTV mix. So
right.
Instead of just looking CTV from one lens, so you can't look just mobile ad from just one lens, or
correct.
even web as one lens. So it has evolved. So the marketer and the planners need to evolve. And again, it's about reaching out to the audience that matters.
How do you educate the planner? Do you guys get involved in any of that? And in your career, did you, like, I know that you did partnerships and it was more on the integration side, but like how does the media planner exist in your world as a influencer?
So when we were taking mobile programmatic in Southeast Asia and Australia, I've interacted a lot with agency guys across all ranks, and even then, most of the marketers are just trying to think the web way and implementing it in the app way. So people have to change their thought process. So, and making them aware, having more cordial conversation and making them aware about it is the best way. I mean, forget about media planners. Even to my 8-year-old kid, I cannot tell him what to do. I can make him aware of the different options he has and give him the pros and cons and what. And if they are able to choose the right way, then they will never forget.
Yeah, so your learning is in your journey. Quite profound, Deepak. I mean, I don't think a media planner thinks like this at all, but I'm glad that we have them in high esteem at this point. I'm sure because, being a planner today is probably...
It's very tough job.
Yeah, it's so overwhelming. Like, where do you place your bets? How do you do it? How do you make this a proper plan, right?
And with all due respect to all the sales team I've worked in, I mean, they hound media planners
for the IOs. Oh, well, business has to come from somewhere because content is expensive at the end of the day. And what to speak to what you were saying, I think it's a very pertinent point that you make on fast, right? Because everybody cannot be expected to jump onto the bandwagon of how do you embrace this new era of internet-enabled broadcast. But also, how do you make money from your library content? How do you make money from the content you spend so much money on, thinking it's going to be like this for the next maybe decade and a half? And so there is a bridge that fast gives you at the end of the day. And there are a lot of technology providers, including Geo, right? To be able to onboard content so that people are able to sort of access it in these new environments as well, right? Speaking of people, access, audience targeting, and all of that, all of the good stuff that we're talking about, where we are saying that there is no leakage, right? We are commoditizing ourselves as audiences, and there is a lot of conversation on privacy, right? Where do you think that has gone in terms of India? I know Europe, the US, especially California, etc., are very stringent about these laws.
California is not so much. I mean, we give them more regard. I think so. EU is much, much stronger. The GDPR is the gold standard for privacy, with due accommodation for the businesses to run. Unfortunately, the way CCPA and GDPR implementation, it has actually killed a lot of small players and make the wall gardens, more money flowing to the wall garden, which is my concern. I think no market or no industry should be like just controlled by a few players. The more the players are, the user, consumer will be the winner. But
right.
With monopoly or duopoly, it's always against the open market.
So in terms of privacy and the privacy laws, because of the fact that these walled gardens have access to large swaths of audiences at volume, they're able to, it's attractive to a marketer to go there and still be compliant, correct?
Yeah.
That's what basically you're saying. And, just before we started the podcast, we were talking about how the ecosystem needs to evolve. And you were giving me an example of VPaid versus VAST as well. What are we waiting on in terms of trying to bring out scalable solutions in being able to address privacy, as well as the need for transparency in audience targeting? So what do you think we require, especially in India right now?
So, I think it's not just restricted to India, but globally. Google, Apple started with IFA deprecation, and they jumped the bandwagon and even enabled cookie deprecation on Safari. Many, many big players were impacted by that. And few just went under the water. Google, on the other hand, have been saying it, and it seems like this year they might actually do it. All the audiences which were created earlier on the IFAs and cookies will just go away, will vanish in thin air. Especially when it is related with the small players. The big marketer, big players in the industry, they will still have the opt-in and way to do it. But to solve the problem, I don't see one or two solution which will help everybody. And everybody is just waiting, because adopting a new technology is just like EV versus a petrol car. We have in Bangalore, I've seen EV for more than 20 years, and that's the best of my knowledge. But EV would have been there, existed much before that.
I think Reva was there before, right? Reva, small little car, yeah.
So, but if you look at it, the maximum amount adoption happened in last 2 years. So initially it will be slow and then it will pick up. But for a publisher, for a DSP, for any players in this industry, including agencies, they're just waiting for one or two solutions to become mainstream, which can help them navigate in this post-cookie, post-IFA-less, cookie-less industry environment. Otherwise, they are just fear of losing all the investment they or their partners have done in VPaid, which never took mainstream.
Right, and only VAST came into play at that point.
But if you look at the history of VAST has been a very old standard. But initially there were very few takers of that, because it was mostly web world. In web world, VAST was, people could do around without the VAST. It was a nice thing to have, like EV, but nobody needed it or saw the advantage of it.
Right.
Then VPaid got introduced much later. It was a bright and shining kid. Everybody loved it, wanted to do it. Few people jumped it, but then the cost of doing it was so high, it never became mainstream. And then people realized the value of VAST, and everything is history.
Embraced it really hard. Yeah. So in privacy as well, there are so many things, right? There are clean rooms that found their like day in the sunshine during COVID. And then, of course, Snowflake also kind of burst onto the scene with their clean room solutions. Like you said, deprecation of cookies and the privacy laws, whether it's GDPR or what we are calling PDPA or CCPA or whatever you have it, right? There are so many privacy laws that are in play. And like you said, GDPR is the gold standard. What are we waiting for? Like, who's supposed to take this step? Like you're saying that, okay, we need to have a solution that everybody understands, cost effective, as well as is considerate to the kind of investments that have happened in the past. Making sure that advertisers get their targeting right, because let's face it, as audience, I would like the right message to be given to me at the right time, which is basically what audience targeting is. I don't hate advertising. I just hate irrelevant advertising, right? I want to be in the know as to what's good and new and what I'd like to buy or feed my capitalist consumerist little part of my body, right? So I really want that to happen. But who is supposed to take this step if not for large monopolistic or duopolistic players in the market because of the power that they wield? And who is supposed to do it? Like, is it supposed to be like a monitoring body, an industry body? Like, what would be your more utopian way of looking at it?
So it has to be a regulatory body like IFA or something similar. But again, if it happens in a fragmented manner, it will never become mainstream. There has to be like one or two, max 3 solutions which people can rely on. Otherwise, the interoperability cost of running the business will become more than the business itself. When you're talking about clean room, it's on a one-on-one basis.
Yes.
Then to run a campaign, to gather the data and exchange the data in all the privacy safe and the regulatory compliant manner is much more than maybe more than the campaign itself.
The CPM in itself, right? Yeah, which is, I think, where everybody is kind of getting kind of a sticker shock, and it doesn't seem like it's going to peter out over the years either, right? Because your server costs are going to go up.
It is already going up. The way, I mean, with or without GDPR, with or without privacy, the way the cost of running an ad tech business has skyrocketed over the world. The number of people on the internet has increased. The number of consumption has increased. Fraud has increased. And just the way the industry has all one request get like forked into dozens, if not hundreds, and then come back to the same players, which make cost of running the business humongous.
Yeah, it's untenable.
Almost making it infeasible.
Talking about fraud, right? And the fact that there is so much fraud. There is always this, like, for every good, there's always this like dark side that kind of rises up, right? When CPC was a big deal, we had all these click farms that came up. Today, with television or with more like awareness branding based campaigns, etc., you're able to see your ad. You have tracking monitoring companies that say, okay, it came onto this platform. But there's always this thing about proving that this campaign ran. And from where I sit, right, we have a revenue management product, right, and we still see reports going out with these screenshots, right? I just find it so archaic. I have been in the industry for 20 years, right? 15 out of which I've spent in digital marketing. And screenshots were something that was so archaic back then. It's still here. And I'm like, what is up with this like screenshot proving, number one? And fraud has run away from us, right? There is fraud to a next level. Today, somebody in my organization got called on WhatsApp, apparently by me. And I was asking her for some money, and she thought she had to give it to me and for the company or something of that sort. There was so much chaos, and everybody systematically in Voiro was targeted at some point in time. So we had to have like this huge shutdown of make sure that there's corrals and that it's on WhatsApp. It wasn't even on email, right? So the level of fraud is intense, especially in the ad tech world. Are there any like interesting stories that you have with fraud that you've experienced as part of your career? Your eyebrows are like raised to your poet's sake. Oh man, we need another
story to pick up. I was thinking about which story to pick up.
We're going to be here all evening.
I think I think so that will require another podcast.
Correct. I agree.
But the interesting one, this was way back like 6-7 years ago, mobile was evolving, and the performance app download campaign is still big. It was also big that time. The monitoring around that was still less matured, and what they were doing is just like the click farm. They used to be install farms.
Oh, okay.
And the only mistake that they did was they didn't spoof the IP address, and all the installs were getting attributed to one IP address on a server IP address.
So it's easy to sort of track down.
Yeah, and it was happening in one of the most mature market with very high CPM.
Oh man, but at least there was a way out on this. Today I was reading.
This is if you talk about it right now, this is all. I mean, the fraud has matured to next level. They can
spoof
everything
and consistently, right? By the time you track them down, it's already something else. It's almost like a spy movie, right? Where you're trying to track money going everywhere else. But so as a marketer today, do you have to actually consider a certain percentage of your budget that is just going to be, it's like paying the fraud man, right? Is that something that is like, if it is an unsaid rule kind of thing?
I would rather say the digital ad fraud industry, as per the report, is actually more than the narcotics industry.
Wow.
Period.
Oh man, that's quite a statement. But I would assume that would be accurate at this point in time, right? But so coming back to the fact that who can fight this, right? And we were talking about the fragmented ecosystem, and I think that's where there's a lot of leverage that most fraud organizations kind of get in, because there are gaps, right? And where you can actually catch a lot of this fraud is in a walled garden. And Jio today is a challenger, a new entrant into this market. Do you foresee a lot more consolidation and gathering of forces in the market to start gaining critical mass, so that you're able to do things like clean rooms and address privacy concerns, as well as raise money in the content space? The primary objective being that people want content, right? We thrive, we love stories and whatever else, but it's very expensive to create. Like you said, ad tech is also extremely expensive to run. Earlier, we would go to a Google and bring in their ad tech and sort of share cash with them. But then the point is that everybody, I think, finally figured that they want to vertically integrate so that they could manage their own cost and speed of innovation as well. So do you think the future is in consolidation, like where you will find not just Jio consolidating and creating a market of its own, but you have other people also sort of collaborating a lot more and creating consolidation? Or do you think there'll be only 2-3 players at the end of the day and everybody else will be long tail?
The way I see it is the need of more collaboration. You will always have few major players. You will always have new challengers, small entrants, long tail. The market will always be filled up with. But until there is collaboration, the industry will not grow, and somebody else will take up the pie, and everybody will be left with crumbs.
Okay, what's next? So CTVs now, it's not the future, like you said, right? There's so many things that are coming up in the future. And, sometimes I feel like when we're talking about even say AI or, what's next in gaming or whatever else, it's still like it's already happening, right? As we speak, there are people coming out with stuff. But there is all, like you said, the market will take time for the solution to fit it, right? And so it's like a pair of jeans that you have to make fit. At the end of the day, it's there. I mean, every time you wear it, it may be loose on you or whatever, but you have to kind of grow to fit it, right? So what do you think is currently out there that is waiting for the market to kind of settle down to fit it, other than our DCRs and privacy stuff? Like what's happening?
So on the bright
fringes?
side, the way I see advertising evolving is it would become more personalized with AI and a mix of AI, ML, and AR, VR. So we will have more immersive experiences in different channels, and generated.
Yeah, generated is
and personalized at the same time.
Yeah. So But it's all still very intrinsic to human creativity, right? Because you have to tell one of the AI tools to do it. Or do you think it's going to just start generating it on its own? Like, are we going to have a factory of AI generated stuff?
I mean, with all due respect to everybody in AI, it's again a bunch of rules that the system understands. System by itself are dumb. What you tell them to do it, they will do it.
Sure.
The more information you share with them, they will be able to do things better. But any system by itself, even if it can play chess and beat the grandmaster, again, it's running bunch of rules
Fair
and
enough.
models. So
Yeah. So we can start playing different games then, basically.
the way the future is evolving, and it's not just in our industry, but everywhere, we as humans need to be more creative about the way we things done. Every mundane task will get automated, either through AI or robots.
Good. I'm looking forward to that future, man. Genuinely, right? Where one of the things about being an entrepreneur is that you can be creative, but then there are a lot of times we just get bogged down by the day to day, right? Because it's tough running a business, and I'm pretty sure in product management as well. There's a concept of a product owner. You're visualizing and innovating, and then it comes down to the how-tos and writing stories and getting it through QA and the mundane stuff, right?
Devil lies in the details.
Yeah, devil lies in the details. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that there'll be a lot of product managers or aspiring product managers listening to this podcast as well. Any words of wisdom on how they can structure their careers to flourish in the next 5 to 10 years, based on what you are seeing with your team, yourself, and the market, especially for ad tech product managers?
Just two things, and it's not just related to ad tech. Like anything that you do, I mean, always challenge your assumption. I mean, we are biased in every decision that we take, and sometimes that biases are necessary for our survival. But as things are evolving, all the biases are getting challenged. So challenge your assumptions, your biases, and fail fast, move fast. There is no second option to that. If you keep waiting for the best alternative, you will never get married.
Okay, then on that very deep note, thank you, Deepak, for joining us today on the podcast. We covered a whole bunch. I know, we've been, when we started off, we made a bunch of notes, etc. saying we've got to talk about all of this. I think we covered most of it. If you want to reach out to Deepak, he's on LinkedIn. And, I've enjoyed this conversation because, like we keep saying on this podcast, we have easy conversations on serious topics. And we covered a lot of serious topics today, be it CTV and its present, solutions, what's happening with privacy and clean rooms, how collaboration works towards, the market gaining at the end of the day. And of course, how do you be a better version of yourself as a professional as well, whether it's without AI or understanding how to fail fast, but just do it kind of thing, right? So thank you so much, Deepak. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you, Kavita. Pleasure was all mine.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Santosh, Gautam, and Leena, for putting this podcast together. See you next week.